Man, these guys are putting out albums like clockwork. Let's dive into the next one. Malina by Leprous, and I hope that's how you pronounce this. Malina is the 6th studio album from Leprous, the Norwegian progressive metal band, progressive tech metal band. These guys really hit the scene in 2009 with the Poppy Syndrome, but for me, it was their 2015 album of The Congregation that really hit me. And so I was excited for my first real new album as a fan from the band, and I gotta admit, for the first 5 or 6 listens, I was actually pretty disappointed with this release. Now, my mind has changed since then, so I'm going to preface that, but I want to talk about my first impression about this album because it is important. This album started off very somber for me and very mellow. The punches that I was hoping from this band was vacant. The amount of really aggressive singing styles was also gone. There was a much more heavy emphasis on atmosphere and synthesized sounds. And I'm all for including more synthesized sounds and synthesized noise, but it felt like it was at the detriment to the other players, like the 2 guitarists as well as the lead drummer. There's a number of tracks on here that don't feature the lead guitarists or the drummer, and it's just the synthesizer with the lead singer. And the lead singer of Einar Solberg, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Einar, his vocal styles are crystal clear on this album, and it's definitely much more of a sorrow output. There's not a whole lot of the aggression that I was hoping for, that I felt with the Poppy Syndrome and Cole and the Congregation. This is much more of a reflective lament. And in some ways it does work, especially within the overall theme and concept of the album. But in the other hand, I was really hoping for that aggressive punch, as I was saying. With so much time now spent with this album, I've begun to get used to this kind of shift. It's very, very subtle, but it is there. And much like the last half of the Congregation, the first number of listens to this new album, I was feeling kind of bored. Tracks such as the title track of Malina, as well as the last track of The Last Milestone. I didn't connect with these songs, and I didn't really feel the emotion that was pouring out. And that might just be the absence of any drumming, or there's a little bit of drumming within the title track. And the one thing that I did notice, and why I held off reviewing this for so long, because I did find a copy earlier last week, the quality was surprisingly weak in terms of like the actual file that I had found. And I thought, okay, it's just a really crappy quality. But then on Friday, when it was released to Spotify, it was the same quality, and you really heard it within the cymbals. And even with the second song of Stuck, it just stopped abruptly. And again, I thought that, okay, it's just this copy that I found, that's what's causing this error, and so by the time on Friday, I'll experience the full thing with a high quality, a high definition sound, and a finalized Stuck. Unfortunately, that's not what I got on Spotify. And I don't know if this was intentional, because what I found on iTunes is that high quality Stuck is still not finished. But it was a little strange. Here I am paying for premium access, and I'm not really getting it. Anyway, sidebar. I know that's right in the middle of the review, but it's something I needed to get off my chest. So now that I've had a little bit of time really digesting this album, I'm starting to understand it a lot more, and I'm starting to really enjoy it. True, all those things that I loved and that brought me to the Congregation are gone, like those really meaty playouts within Rewind, or that just lamenting out with such an aggressive force within The Flood. This style is not apparent on this new album. What is here is the mood and the atmosphere throughout the songs. And in some ways this works, like I am enjoying it and I am coming back to the album, but in some ways I am feeling that, that thing that I loved about Leprous isn't quite there. It's a little bit different, right? But the one thing that we do have in its place that I do love is this really great kind of sound that they were able to capture with the bass and the lead guitars. And this was really prominent within the first track of Boneville. I think that's how you pronounce it. Once we come into the opening track and just the laying of the foundation of this, it starts to build and it starts to build, and then once we get into this kind of explosion of sound at the midpoint, we have this kind of like flash or shock wave. It's just like boom, and that I really attached to, and I'm like, okay, we're in for a treat now. And the other track that uses this really great is Mirage. I just love when it comes into that midsection and it's got that wow. It's almost like this pulsating entity that's just like giving off this shockwave. I love that sound. And I really wish that they permeated this a little bit more throughout the entirety of the album. The other thing that I noticed that this album has that the past albums didn't was how catchy a lot of these songs are. Stuck from the Flames, Illuminate. These guys are super, super catchy and they just get right into your head. Illuminate, where it's just like, illuminate inside my... It really gets in, which is a strange thing for Leprous to do. I love how punctuated each of these notes are because of that. Illuminate your God might not rise, light your way. Now, even though I said that the final track on this is probably the weakest, I do like the second last track of The Weight of Disaster. This is probably my favorite track off of the album. I love how relentless this song is, and it comes off of the heels of Coma, a really, really standout track and a really strong track in that sense. But with The Weight of Disaster, it just hits and it starts off and it just goes, and I love how it just doesn't stop. As I said, it's very relentless in that sense. I love the pulsatingness. I love the drive. It's a great way to end the album, and unlike The Congregation, which up to this point has been my favorite, it saved one of the best tracks for last so that it gives me something to look forward to when I get into that final stretch of the album. So overall, I've grown to really enjoy this album. The drawbacks are still there, and I still feel them. The most notable one is the sound quality, especially within the Spotify Premium. And I don't know if this is pushing people towards the iTunes side of things. I'm not going to knock the music because of it, but it does lessen my enjoyment overall, which does kind of factor into my overall listening experience. I think this is probably on par with The Congregation in terms of the musical stylings and the genius behind the work, but I don't enjoy it quite as much because it doesn't have that punchy aspect that I was really hoping for. Now, it is made up for the new qualities that we have here, but it doesn't quite satisfy that itch that I was hoping for Leprous to have. Now, still, it's a very positive album and one that I definitely would advise you guys to seek out. I'm not enjoying it as much as everybody else seems to be. I've been reading a lot of reviews and it's been getting very positive reviews, and I'm very, very glad for that. But overall, I'm just not feeling as connected with it as I was hoping it. So I've got to give this one a download. If you're a fan of this band, then you've already checked it out and it's already in your collection. If you're not a fan of this band, this is a good start. I would also recommend the Poppy Syndrome as well as Cole and The Congregation. Really check those guys out because it has some of the essence of what Leprous is, and it'll give you a little bit of context of where this album is coming from. So that's about it. What did you guys think of Malina? Again, I think that's how you pronounce it, Malina. Malina. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.